Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another real story that will leave you questioning what really happens behind prison walls. The East River was colder than anyone could imagine that night. A gray mist hung over the surface, swallowing the glow of the city lights. Somewhere beyond the fog, a man's desperate voice echoed through the darkness. "Help! Somebody, please." But the only answer was the sound of the current pulling him under. From the bridge that connected Rikers Island to Queens, two correctional officers leaned over the railing, flashlights shaking in their hands. "I see him. He's going under," one of them yelled. A faint ripple broke the surface, then disappeared completely. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the radio crackled. "Central, inmates in the water requesting rescue support now." But no rescue ever made it in time. The man vanished beneath the black waves, leaving only a trail of bubbles and a floating orange jumpsuit drifting toward the Bronx shore. That man's name was David Simmons, and he was the first inmate in nearly a decade to make it past the island's fences. But what no one knew that night was that David's escape wasn't just a random act of desperation, it was something he had been planning for months. And as the officers searched the water, they had no idea this failed escape would soon expose secrets about Rikers Island no one was meant to know. It all began 4 months earlier. David had been locked up at Rikers for a small-time robbery that turned violent. He wasn't a killer, but Rikers treated him like one. He'd been there long enough to see things most people wouldn't believe: guards taking bribes, inmates running stores inside their cells, and fights that broke out over something as small as a packet of ramen. He used to say, "Man, this place ain't for living. It's a slow death." His cellmate, Jerome, an older inmate with gray hair and tired eyes, would always shake his head. "Ain't no one ever leaving this place alive if they try it, Dave. The river eats men who think they can outsmart it." But David wasn't listening. Every night, from the small window of his cell, he could see the bridge, the only road connecting Rikers Island to the rest of New York City. It looked so close, like freedom itself was just a few hundred feet away. Then came the news that pushed him over the edge. His mother had died in the Bronx. David begged for a day pass to attend the funeral, but the request was denied. That's when he decided he wasn't going to wait for his release date anymore. He was going to escape. He spent weeks studying guard patterns. When the night shifts changed, when the floodlights dimmed for maintenance, when the patrol boats passed, he wrote everything down in tiny letters on the inside of his mattress cover. Jerome caught him one night. "You crazy, man. You ain't gonna make it. You seen that water? Cold as ice, full of current. It'll drag you down before you even make it halfway." David smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'll just have to swim faster." He laughed, but his voice trembled. The night of the escape was foggy, perfect for what he had planned. The maintenance crew had been fixing one of the outer fences. For 30 minutes, one section near the laundry building was left unpowered. That was all the time he needed. David slipped out during the late-night laundry shift, still wearing his uniform. He crept past the watchtower and crawled through the fence gap, his hands shaking as the metal scraped his skin. By the time an alarm went off, he was already running toward the water. Inmates who later saw it said it looked like a dream: a man sprinting across the yard, fog wrapping around him like smoke, and guards shouting into the distance. When the floodlights hit him, David didn't stop. He reached the shore, tore off his shoes, and jumped straight into the East River. For a few seconds, it seemed like he might actually make it. He was halfway to the bridge when one of the tower guards shouted, "He's in the water. Send a rescue boat now." But the current was stronger than it looked. The tide around Rikers moves fast, twice as fast as a normal river current. And as the water pulled him down, David's screams faded into the night. What happened next would leave even the officers speechless. Because 2 days later, something washed up on the Bronx shore, something that shouldn't have been there. 2 days had passed since David Simmons disappeared into the dark waters of the East River. News of the escape spread quickly across Rikers Island. Some inmates whispered that he had made it. Others said the river took him, like it took everyone who tried before. But early that Friday morning, a call came through to the correctional control room. "This is NYPD Harbor Unit," the voice on the radio said. "We've recovered something you'll want to see." When the officers arrived at the shoreline in Hunts Point, the air smelled of salt and gasoline. A small crowd of city workers stood near the water's edge, their faces pale and quiet. There, tangled in seaweed and garbage, was a single orange prison jumpsuit, the same kind issued at Rikers. It was ripped at the collar, heavy with water, and still had a faded name stitched on the tag, David Simmons. But that wasn't the strange part. Inside the pocket, wrapped tightly in plastic, was a folded piece of paper. Officer Carla Mendoza pulled on a glove and opened it carefully. The ink had smudged from the water, but a few words were still clear. They said, "No one escapes. But you don't know what happens inside." Carla frowned. "What does that mean?" Her partner, Officer Torres, shook his head. "Whatever it means, this isn't just about an escape. Someone helped him." Back at Rikers, investigators questioned everyone who had contact with David during his final days. The name that came up most often was Jerome Ellis, his cellmate. Jerome sat quietly when they brought him in, his eyes fixed on the floor. "You knew Simmons better than anyone," the warden said. "You see him planning this?" Jerome hesitated. "David, he talked about leaving, yeah. But he wasn't running away from time. He was running from them." "Who's them?" the warden asked. Jerome's lips tightened. "The guards. The ones working the night shift near the laundry bay. He said they were using the inmates for something. Something off the books." The room went still. The warden leaned forward. "You better explain what you mean, Ellis." Jerome sighed. "Look, people go missing here sometimes. They say they got transferred. But no one ever sees them again. David said he had proof papers he found near the infirmary. He said he was gonna expose it." The warden's face turned red. "That's nonsense. Do you have any idea what you're accusing my officers of?" Jerome didn't flinch. "I know what I heard. He told me if anything happened to him, someone should check the old maintenance tunnel under the laundry building. Said it leads to where they keep the deliveries." That night, Officer Mendoza couldn't shake what Jerome said. After her shift, she went to the records room and started digging. The maintenance tunnel was real, built decades ago when Rikers first expanded. But according to recent blueprints, it was marked out of use. Yet, the week before David's escape, someone had filed a maintenance request under a fake name. Mendoza's stomach tightened. What if he wasn't trying to escape, she whispered to herself. What if he was trying to get out through the tunnel? She decided to see for herself. The next evening, under the cover of darkness, she made her way to the laundry bay. The hallway was quiet, only the hum of the old fluorescent lights above. She found the service hatch half hidden behind a broken cart. The lock was new, shiny, and out of place. Her hands trembled as she turned the key she had stolen from the equipment board. The hatch creaked open, releasing a rush of damp, cold air. A metal staircase led down into the darkness. She turned on her flashlight and began to descend. The tunnel smelled of rust and salt. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing through the narrow space. The deeper she went, the more uneasy she felt. Then, the beam of her light caught something ahead. A torn piece of orange fabric. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. That's when she saw it, a makeshift wooden door, nailed together from crates, half hanging open. Behind it, faint light flickered. She pushed it gently, and the sight before her froze her in place. Stacked along the walls were dozens of sealed boxes marked with the words, "Property of New York City Department of Correction." But inside one of them, half open, water-stained, was something she couldn't explain. A camera. A recorder. And dozens of labeled tapes. The one on top was marked, "Night Shift, East Yard, 03/12. Her hand shook as she picked it up. "Dear God," she whispered. What were they hiding down here? Officer Carla Mendoza stared at the dusty tape in her hands. The tunnel was silent except for the distant dripping of water. Her flashlight flickered, throwing long shadows across the boxes. She knew what she was about to do could cost her career or worse. But something inside her told her this was bigger than one missing inmate. She took the recorder and the camera back to the security room during the midnight shift. The guards were tired, half asleep, and barely noticed her slip inside. She locked the door, pulled the blinds, and placed the tape inside the old player. For a moment, the screen stayed black. Then static gave way to a grainy image of the East Yard, filmed at night. 3 figures appeared on screen, 2 in guard uniforms, 1 in an orange jumpsuit. The inmate's hands were cuffed. His face was swollen, hard to see. Carla leaned closer. The guards pushed the inmate toward the edge of the yard, near the water channel that led to the river. One of them said, "No one's gonna find you down there." Then, without warning, they shoved him into the darkness below. The sound of a splash echoed through the speakers. Carla froze. The timestamp on the screen read March 12, 2:18 a.m., the night David Simmons disappeared. Her pulse raced. "Oh my God," she whispered. "They didn't chase him. They threw him in." She copied the footage onto a flash drive and hid it in her boot. She knew she had to get it to someone outside Rikers before morning. But when she stepped out of the security room, she realized something was wrong. The hallway was empty. Too empty. A faint buzzing sound filled the air, the sound of radios tuned to a private channel. Then a voice echoed behind her. "Looking for something, officer?" It was Lieutenant Harris, one of the night shift supervisors. His uniform was crisp, his face calm, but his eyes were cold. Carla swallowed hard. "Just finishing a report." Harris smiled slightly. "Funny. I heard you've been spending time near the laundry bay." Carla's heart pounded. "Just checking on a maintenance ticket." "Is that so?" He stepped closer. "See, the thing about this place, secrets don't stay buried for long. But people who dig for them usually do." Before she could answer, the power suddenly cut out. The hallway went dark. Only the red glow of the emergency lights flickered on and off. Then, through the static of her walkie, a voice whispered, "They know. Get out." It was Jerome. Carla turned and ran. Alarms started blaring, though no one knew why. The gates locked automatically, sealing off parts of the prison. She darted down the service corridor toward the yard, clutching the flash drive. Outside, the fog was heavy over the water again, just like the night David vanished. She could hear shouting behind her, guards calling her name, their flashlights cutting through the mist. She stopped at the edge of the river. There was nowhere left to go. Her radio crackled again. Jerome's voice came through, low and urgent. "If you can hear me, there's a boat dock under the north bridge. That's how they move the bodies. Go now." Carla hesitated for only a second. She climbed down the embankment, her boots sliding on wet concrete. But when she reached the dock, she froze. A small patrol boat was already there, and on it stood Lieutenant Harris, waiting, flashlight in hand. "Going somewhere, officer," he said, stepping forward. She backed away slowly. "You killed him. You killed David." Harris shook his head. "He wasn't supposed to talk. You weren't supposed to see that tape." He raised his hand, motioning towards someone behind her. 2 more guards appeared from the fog, blocking her escape. Carla's eyes darted toward the water. The river churned violently under the bridge lights. "Give me the drive," Harris said softly. "And I'll forget this happened." Carla took a deep breath. You can bury the truth down there with him, but it's still going to rise. Then she threw herself backward, straight into the East River. The guards shouted as the flashlight beam hit the water, but she was already gone beneath the surface. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, from far downstream, a single light bobbed up from the fog, a flashlight, still glowing, floating toward the Bronx shore. No one saw Officer Mendoza again after that night. But 2 weeks later, a news outlet received an unmarked package. Inside was a flash drive labeled Rikers, The Impossible Escapes. The footage would air on television the following month, sparking an internal investigation that revealed years of abuse, corruption, and cover-ups. And the strangest part? In the corner of one tape, barely visible, was the reflection of another inmate, someone who wasn't listed in the prison records. Someone wearing David Simmons' number. When the footage leaked to the press, New York exploded with questions. How could something like this happen on one of the most secure islands in America? Who were the guards in the video? And most importantly, if the man thrown into the river was David Simmons, then who was the inmate seen alive in the reflection? The Department of Correction denied everything. They called the tape edited, fabricated, and an attempt to damage public trust. But within days, investigators from the Department of Justice arrived at Rikers. They demanded full access to the facility, every logbook, every security file, every camera feed. For the first time in years, the gates of Rikers opened not to let someone in or out, but to let the truth breathe. Inside the control room, agents played the leaked footage on a loop. Zooming in, slowing down, freezing every frame. There, one investigator said, pointing to the reflection in the window of a patrol car parked near the yard. That's him. That's Simmons. But that's impossible, another replied. He drowned weeks before this was filmed. The lead agent, a calm woman with a dark suit and sharper eyes, leaned forward. Unless the man who went into the water wasn't David Simmons at all. Down in the inmate records office, they began comparing rosters. That's when they found something unusual, a transfer sheet dated the same night as the escape. It listed an inmate named Michael Sloan, but there was no intake file, no mugshot, no signature. Just a single note scribbled beside his name, moved to East Wing, temporary. The same wing where David's cell had once been. When investigators checked the East Wing, they found a small, unused storage room behind a broken wall vent. Inside were several empty uniforms, fake ID tags, and a clipboard with two names written in pencil, Simmons/Sloan. One of the agents whispered, they switched them. What happened next unraveled the darkest truth about Rikers Island. Officer Carla Mendoza had been right, the tunnel wasn't for maintenance. It was used for secret inmate transfers, moving certain prisoners off record, sometimes for money, sometimes for favors. Lieutenant Harris and a small group of guards were part of it. They'd fake drownings, fake transfers, and even fake deaths, covering their tracks by reporting escape attempts. Every time an inmate vanished, their file was quietly marked deceased. No one asked questions. Until David Simmons. David had stumbled on the operation by accident while working near the infirmary. He'd overheard guards talking about moving Sloan, a man who supposedly didn't exist. When David started asking questions, they punished him, keeping him in solitary for weeks. But instead of staying quiet, he began gathering proof, sneaking into the records room and photographing documents with a stolen phone. When they found out, they decided to silence him for good. The night of the escape, they grabbed another inmate, Michael Sloan, who was roughly David's size and build. They dressed him in David's uniform, handcuffed him, and threw him into the water. The cameras caught it, but the plan worked, until the tape was discovered. The real David Simmons never drowned. He disappeared through the maintenance tunnel that same night with the help of Officer Mendoza. Weeks after the investigation began, a reporter received another anonymous message. No name, no sender, just a short email with a video attached. In it, a man stood in front of a dark apartment window, his face hidden in shadow. His voice was low, calm, and deliberate. My name is David Simmons. I didn't escape Rikers. I escaped what they made Rikers into. They told me no one ever leaves alive. They were almost right. He paused. If you're hearing this, they'll try to cover it again. But the truth's out now. Rikers isn't just a jail, it's a secret no one wants to see. The screen flickered and went black. In the months that followed, Rikers Island faced one of the largest internal investigations in its history. Several officers, including Lieutenant Harris, were arrested and charged with corruption, falsifying records, and obstruction of justice. But Officer Mendoza's body was never found. And neither was David Simmons. The East River kept its secrets. And to this day, late-night guards on Rikers say that when the fog rolls in thick and the bridge lights flicker, They sometimes hear a voice carried across the water whispering from somewhere unseen. No one escapes Rikers. Every story hides a truth, and sometimes, the truth hides forever. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments, we want to know what you think really happened. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next case might just be darker than this one. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep your eyes open.